Hello, dreamers, and welcome back to the Dreamer's Vault. Tonight, I'm unlocking a story meant to keep your mind curious and your body calm. And don't worry, no mid-ads. Once we begin, the story will play through without interruptions. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? And if these stories help you relax, tap like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you don't miss the next one. Now, get cozy, lower the lights, and let's drift into the dark together. Story 1. The Devil at Table 6. Some nights, the desert air outside feels thick with secrets. Even before the first customer drifts through the door, you can taste something heavy, something old, in the dust that clings to the windows of Lucky's Diner. I always tell myself there's nothing to fear, that a well-lit room and a pot of fresh coffee are enough to keep the dark at bay. But some places are thin as paper, and some hours are softer, stranger than others. Tonight, as the neon sign flickered in the glass, and the jukebox hummed a tune I'd never heard, I knew in my bones that the shadows were waiting for more than just sunrise. Lucky's Diner sits at the edge of a nowhere town, the kind of place you pass through when you're running out of time or out of hope. It's always open, always. My uniform's name tag says Isabella, but that's not my name. It was my mother's, and when people say it, I like to imagine she's still here. Still a part of every whispered greeting, every order called across the counter. It keeps the memory of her from sinking into the red desert earth, from vanishing beneath the neon and the dust. You see a lot working at Lucky's. People on the run, people searching for something they lost in the dark, people who don't want to be found. The air here is always shifting. One moment the lights hum, the next they flicker out, plunging the place into a trembling hush, like the diner itself is holding its breath. I learned early to pay attention. Some folks talk too much, some never say a word, but their stories show in their eyes, or in the way their hands shake, or in the way they never touch their food. You see pain settle in bones, loss curling beneath fingernails, and sometimes, if you're careful, you can lift a little of that sadness away, just with a smile or a hot cup of coffee. There are regulars, too, people the highway can't quite shake loose. Rosemarie, with her long white hair and her pockets full of voodoo dolls, always sips whiskey-laced tea and shuffles a battered deck of hotel cards. She claims she can read the future in your coffee grounds, and I half believe her. Jones, the deputy, is always hunched in the corner booth, steam curling from his chipped mug. There's a gentleness in his hands that doesn't fit the badge, and a sorrow in his eyes that never leaves. Lou, our fry cook, cries at every sad song on the jukebox and every new missing poster taped to the phone booth outside. Carlos knows the recipe for Lucky's pancakes and brings wildflowers to my mother's grave every Sunday. Sometimes late at night, a hush falls over the diner, a silence thick enough to muffle even the saddest country song. That's when I notice the lost things. A man weeping as he buries a deer in the sunset, a girl singing on her car as coyotes howl at the moon, a woman showing me a photograph of her own grave. People who flicker at the edges of my vision, whose faces seem to blur if I look too long. Creatures in the desert, waiting just outside the neon's reach, shifting in the blue night, patient as time. But this story isn't about them. It was a Friday, deep into a night shift that felt like it might never end. I liked nights. The world seemed softer, quieter, and there was always the hope that if I followed the taillights in front of me long enough, I'd end up somewhere better. We only had 3 true regulars at Lucky's, and so far only 2 had shown. Rosemarie sat by the window, her cards already spread, her eyes shining like moonlit glass. She winked at me, crow's feet deepening as she fed cake crumbs to her dolls and muttered secrets to the night. Jones was at his booth, nursing his coffee like a prayer. I poured him another, brushing his hand with my wrist, lifting the sadness for a heartbeat. He smiled, brief and shy, the kind of smile that makes you want to linger a little longer in the shelter of his gaze. The rest of the night slipped by in snapshots. Truckers swapping stories and showing me baby photos. A woman in her Labrador sharing hot dogs. 3 blood-stained boys in varsity jackets asking for waffles and talking about things that move under the full moon. Twin women in silk skirts packing up crucifixes and duct tape, whispering about a body they'd buried and how it just wouldn't stay put. Lou danced in the kitchen, spatula in hand, singing along to Dolly on the radio. Carlos handed me a plate of pancakes, Lucky's special hot and golden as the desert sunrise. He nodded towards the front, voice low. He's back. Table 6. My stomach dropped. Table 6 was always spotless, always empty, except when it wasn't. No salt shaker, no cutlery. Only one man ever sat there. I glanced up and caught Carlos's eye. He tossed me the salt, his face grim. Lou fetched the battered Bible from his locker, flipping it open at random. Keep far from a false charge, and do not kill the innocent and righteous, for I will not acquit the wicked. He shrugged and patted my shoulder. I don't get paid enough for this, he murmured. I approached table 6, pancakes in hand, heart thudding. The man waiting there smiled, or tried to. The expression pulled at his lips, revealing teeth too bright and too sharp. His eyes darted like trapped flies, never settling, and his hands trembled as he crushed the pancakes between his fingers. Can I get you anything else? I asked, voice forced bright, as I kept my distance. He grinned wider, leaning in, sniffing the air near my face. I'd take your name, he rasped. I tapped my name tag. Isabella. He shook his head, smile slipping, tongue darting out quick as a snake's. Isabella, 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 Isabella. It don't suit. He crammed the crushed pancake into his mouth, the motion sudden, violent. My fingers curled around the salt in my apron. His eyes narrowed, reading my fear, his hands still trembling on the table. There's no need for that. A deep voice rolled over my shoulder, smooth and cold, like water over midnight stones. I turned. Mr. Prince had arrived. He always wore black pinstripes, a Stetson darker than the desert night, boots gleaming as if wet. Silver-rimmed sunglasses hid his eyes, even indoors. If you didn't look too close, you'd think he was just a man, someone rich, maybe dangerous, maybe just passing through. But the crucifixes on his lapel were upside down, and the air around him always felt a few degrees colder. He slid into the booth beside the man at table 6, nodding at me, lips curling in a half-smile that never reached his eyes. Sorry for my acquaintance, he drawled. He's a little overexcited. He handed the man a menu, the lights flickering overhead. The man ordered 4 cheeseburgers and a glass of milk, giggling as he spoke, a thin, high sound that made my skin crawl. As I walked away, Rosemary called me over, eyes wise and sad. She tapped her cards, the jack of spades, its eyes scratched out, as if it had always been that way. We won't be seeing him again, she whispered. She wasn't talking about Mr. Prince. Back in the kitchen, Lou doused me with holy water from the spray bottle, just in case. I spluttered, but couldn't help laughing, the darkness easing for a moment. Carlos flipped patties, eyes twinkling with silent amusement. Sometimes, the only way through the night is with laughter. It was almost 3 when I returned to table 6 with the cheeseburgers. The man's eyes gleamed as I set them down. Suddenly he lunged, licking the inside of my wrist, his tongue wet and too long, rough as sandpaper. You taste better than they will, he whispered, gesturing at the food. I wiped my wrist, shuddering, holding back tears. Mr. Prince watched, unreadable behind his glasses. Tell Carlos the pancakes were good as hell, he said softly, a smile curling around his cigarette. I passed Jones, who waved me over, concern etched deep into his young face. Is he bothering you? he asked, voice low. Nothing I can't handle, I replied, thinking of Rosemarie's words. We won't be seeing him again. The night stretched on. Men with butterfly tattoos, truckers pouring whiskey into their coffee for absent friends, biker girls rolling in on tired engines. The man in the rabbit mask lingered by the dumpsters. I ignored him, as always. At 3:03 a.m., Mr. Prince stood. The man at table 6, Leroy, sat silent, hands gripping the tabletop, teeth bared in a grin, knuckles white as milk. Mr. Prince handed me a roll of bills wrapped in black plastic. He tipped his hat. See, Leroy? We all gotta pay, eventually. He turned to me, voice low as a grave. For I will not acquit the wicked, he murmured, echoing the Bible. He held out his hand to Leroy, who reached into his jacket and pulled out a pair of child's shoes. Small, pink, stained. Mr. Prince weighed them, then passed them to me. For your man over there, tell him to dig deeper where they looked last, he said, nodding to Jones. Leroy's hands shook. Mr. Prince grinned, taking him by the hand like a father leading a son. They walked out into the night together, the doors swinging shut behind them, untouched. The jukebox sputtered. Chris Ria's voice drifted through the diner, singing about that long, lonesome road again. I set the shoes by Jones's coffee, passing on the message. He stared at them, unmoving, caught between rage and heartbreak. My shift ended as the first light crept into the sky. I drove home in silence, following the taillights ahead, hoping that somewhere beyond the blacktop, the desert might turn to ocean, that I might find salt in the air, and the weight of the night finally washed away. But Lucky's Diner is always open. The road never ends, and the devil always leaves a seat at table 6. Some nights, when the world is quiet, I remember their faces, the regulars, the lost souls, the ones who never left. I pour myself a cup of coffee, let the darkness settle around me, and wonder who I'll serve next. If you ever find yourself passing through a nowhere town and you see the neon sign glowing through the desert night, come on in. The coffee's hot. The pancakes are the best you'll ever have. And if you see a man in black, tip your waitress and don't ask too many questions. Some stories are best left unfinished, some debts unpaid, because at Lucky's the doors never close, and you never know who might be waiting just beyond the glass. Dare to listen to this next tale. Story 2. Under the back porch. When I was a child, I learned to become invisible. Some houses are built for hiding, for holding secrets in their bones. Ours was quiet as a grave most nights, except when the yelling started. The house was small, set far from neighbors, cocooned by tangled woods. There was nowhere to run, and so I learned to vanish, to slip into dark corners, to fold myself up small enough to escape notice, even if just for a while. It was the kind of skill that keeps you safe, but never really lets you rest. I remember being 6 years old, already a master at slipping out of sight. I could tuck myself into closets, nestle behind the rattling dryer, squeeze beneath my narrow bed where the dust bunnies lived. Sometimes if I got lucky, I'd find a place so small and tight that even the anger in my father's footsteps couldn't reach me. But hiding wasn't something I did for fun. It was survival, the only kind of magic I ever believed in. The nights were always the worst. On those nights when my father's temper flared and his voice turned to thunder, I could feel the storm coming long before the first crash. My mother would be in the kitchen, a cigarette in one hand, her words sharp as knives, as she blamed him for everything she'd lost. Neither of them ever seemed to see me, but I always saw them. One night I heard the warning signs, the harsh shouts, the slam of fists against the table. I knew I needed a better place to hide. A few days before, I'd noticed the old lattice beneath the back porch, a gap just big enough for a small child. It was muddy, damp, and filled with shadows, but that night, Clutching my threadbare blanket and my favorite hippo stuffed toy, I crawled out my bedroom window and ran into the cold autumn air. I slipped through the hole, elbows scraping on splintered wood, knees pressed into the wet earth. It was colder than I expected, 40 degrees, maybe less, but under the porch the world felt quieter. I wrapped my blanket around me and pressed my hippo to my chest, listening to my teeth chatter in the dark. That's when I heard her voice, soft, gentle, nothing like my mother's. "Honey, are you cold?" I turned, heart pounding, and in the dimness beside me, I saw the faint outline of a woman. She lay on her stomach, mud on her clothes, a butterfly necklace catching what little light there was. I nodded. I didn't ask how she'd gotten there. I was 6, and loneliness is its own kind of hunger. The woman Lily, she told me, slid closer and wrapped her arms around me. Warmth flooded through me, chasing away the cold. I didn't mind the mud. I didn't even question how she knew my name, or why she looked at me with so much love in her tired eyes. "You've gotten so big, Alex. How old are you now?" "6, I replied, the words soft in the quiet. She smiled, stroking my hair, and for a little while I felt safe. We talked about board games and coloring. She laughed when I said I liked Scrabble, even though I was too little for all the words. I asked if she'd play with me someday, and her voice caught. I wish I could, but I need your help, Alex. When you wake up, go to the police station. Find Sheriff Joyce. Tell him where to find me. Under the back porch. Can you do that?" I nodded, too grateful for the warmth to think about anything else. That night, wrapped in Lily's arms, I fell asleep. When morning came, I was stiff and cold, mud clinging to my pajamas, but Lily's voice was still in my ear, gentle, guiding me. "Go now. Your dad's gone to work. I'll help you find the way." I don't remember the walk to town, only that it felt endless, my small legs aching, my hands numb in the frost. But I followed Lily's voice, her instructions soft and sure. "Cross, turn right, almost there." The police station loomed ahead, a gray shape in the early light. I stumbled inside, ignored by the grown-ups until I reached the front desk. A police officer crouched down, concern creasing his face. "Hey kid, are you okay?" I nodded. "Can I talk to Sheriff Joyce?" He wrapped me in a blanket, brought me hot cocoa, and soon an older man with a kind face and a graying mustache appeared. He knelt by my side. "I'm Sheriff Joyce. What's your name?" "Alex," I answered, voice shaking. "Lily's under the back porch. She needs you to come get her. She said we could play Scrabble if I did." I'd never seen an adult turn so pale so quickly. After that, things blurred. Sirens, flashing lights, police everywhere. My father in handcuffs. The house circled in yellow tape. People speaking in hushed voices as they carried something away in a black bag. I was taken away too, to live with my grandparents, the sheriff, and his wife. No one ever wanted to talk about Lily. I was too young, they said, but my new life was gentle, filled with kindness and warmth. My grandparents taught me how to cook, how to laugh again, how to live without looking over my shoulder. I learned to paint, to make birthday cakes for my friends, to trust a grown-up's hug. Years passed, and the old house faded into a memory, until the day on my 16th birthday, Grandpa drove me out to what was left of it. The place was gone, bulldozed and empty, but the land remembered. Yellow tape still fluttered in the wind, wrapped around the trees. We sat on the back of his truck, orange soda for me, beer for him. Grandpa turned serious. "Lily was your mother, Alex," he said softly. "My daughter. She vanished when you were just a baby. We searched everywhere, but she was gone. Your father," his hands shook as he told me the rest, how Lily died, how she'd been buried under the porch, how my father confessed after I walked into the station all those years ago. I sat there stunned, unable to breathe, but I saw her. She was alive. She had this butterfly necklace. Grandpa reached into his pocket, pulled out a small evidence bag. Inside was Lily's butterfly necklace, tarnished, but unmistakable. He pressed it into my hands. Sometimes, Alex, a mother's love is stronger than death. You saved yourself, and you saved her. She stayed with you, even when she couldn't stay. Tears slipped down my cheeks as I clutched the necklace to my chest. For just a moment, I felt that warmth again, the same warmth that had saved me all those years ago under the back porch. Sometimes on quiet nights I hear Lily's voice in my dreams, soft and loving, telling me I'm safe, that I'm loved. I grew up and found peace, but I never forgot what it felt like to hide, or the way the world can shift in the space between shadows. If you ever find yourself alone and afraid, remember, love can reach you, even in the darkest places. Sometimes all it takes is the courage to listen, and the hope that someone somewhere is holding you close, even if you can't see them. Not. This story starts simple, but ends in chills. Story 3. Knock Knock. Some nights you wake up certain you're not alone, even when you know the shape of every shadow in your home by heart. For years I slept easy beside Ellen, lulled by her gentle breathing and the warmth of her hand in mine. But sometimes something changes, quietly without warning, and you realize you never truly knew the person sleeping next to you. It only takes a few nights for your whole life to unravel, and for the darkness to learn your name. If you'd asked me a month ago, I would have told you my world began and ended with Ellen. We'd grown up together, two halves of a single story, childhood friends, lost and found, and finally, thankfully, lovers. We fit so perfectly, people said it seemed almost fated. We built a quiet life. Our days were ordinary, soft, comfortable. We shared inside jokes, whispered dreams, and plans for a future that felt so real I could almost reach out and touch it. But even the safest routines can crack. Even the gentlest faces can turn unfamiliar in the right kind of darkness. It began quietly. On a Wednesday, I was asleep, drifting in some formless dream, when I felt her fingers in my hair, soft and familiar. I opened my eyes expecting her usual sleepy smile, but Ellen was sitting upright, her face pale in the glow of the digital clock. 3:27 a.m. She leaned down, her eyes fixed on mine, voice as calm as always. Knock, 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 knock. I blinked, disoriented. Hey, what's going on? She just watched me, waiting, that same strange smile curving her lips. Knock, knock, knock. Please answer the joke, dear. I chuckled, a little unsettled. Okay, who's there? Her smile widened, but her eyes didn't change. Not me. So don't answer the door. I frowned, half amused, half bewildered. That's it? Is that the joke? She nodded, then rolled away, curling up in her blanket as if nothing had happened. I lay awake, listening to her slow breathing, telling myself it was just a dream. But morning came, and the memory lingered, a cold thread running through the warmth of our routine. At breakfast, Ellen was her old self, reading aloud from a magazine, laughing at something silly. I tried to ask about the joke, but she barely remembered, her smile quick and distracted.
I should have pressed, but I let it go. It didn't seem important. Not that.
The next night, it happened again. A whisper in the darkness. Knock, knock. This time she sat further away, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes unblinking. Again the clock read 3:27. Her voice was softer, thinner, but the words were the same. I answered, more annoyed than amused. Who's there? Not me. So don't answer the door. Her smile stayed frozen and eerie. I began to dread the night. I tried talking to her, but her answers grew evasive, distant, like she was reciting lines she barely understood. Ellen had always been guarded with her feelings, but now there was a wall between us, cold and high. By the third night, Sleep was a lost hope. I lay awake listening for her voice, for the sound of her shifting in the bed. When she finally began, knock, 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 I refused to answer. I thought if I just ignored her, it would stop, but she only grew more insistent. The words repeating, rhythmic like a nursery rhyme, turned wrong. I snapped, anger masking my fear. I'm not answering your joke, Ellen. Stop it. Still, she kept going. I turned to her and saw something I'd never seen before. Her eyes wide and glassy, a smile stretching too far, her face caught in a mask that wasn't hers. Finally, defeated, I whispered, "Who's there?" Her voice dropped to a whisper, "Not me, so don't answer the door." She lay back, eyes closing, the room falling silent except for the beating of my own heart. I spent that night on the living room couch, staring at the dark window, trying to convince myself that it was all some elaborate sleepwalking prank, some stress, some grief from losing her mother last year, something explainable, but my nerves hummed with unease. I called a friend, a psychologist, hoping for logic, for a path forward. We set an appointment, and I promised myself I'd get Ellen there, no matter what. Ellen tried to act normal the next day, but there was a distance between us now, a silence that neither of us could break. She apologized, promised it wouldn't happen again. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But that night, it happened again. I didn't even bother to look at her. I just answered hollow and tired. "Who's there?" "Not me, so don't answer the door." The joke landed between us, heavy and strange. I tried to sleep, but the house felt too still, the air too thick. The following morning, she was quiet. We barely spoke. That night, I left her the bed and slept on the couch, praying it would be enough. But the darkness is never that simple. I woke to a presence above me, a shadow that loomed too close. Ellen stood by the couch, her eyes impossibly wide, pupils swallowing the color, her face unreadable. I flinched, scrambling away, my heart thundering. She didn't move, she didn't speak. She just watched. Then, a knock at the front door. At first, I thought I imagined it. Then another knock, harder. 3, 4, each one shuddering through the walls of the house. I looked at Ellen. She didn't move, didn't blink. The knocking continued, louder now, frantic. Then, a voice. My name, shouted through the door. "John, John, can you hear me? Please open the door." "She's not me, John, she's not me." It was Ellen's voice, her real voice calling from outside, desperate, terrified. I stared at the woman by the couch, at her vacant eyes and that terrible grin. The pounding continued. "John, please, open the door." I don't remember what happened next. Maybe I opened the door. Maybe I ran. All I know is that I woke in my bed, alone, the clock reading 4:21. The house was silent, except for a faint scratching sound from somewhere below. I tried to call for help, but my phone was gone. Left downstairs in the dark, all I had was Ellen's laptop and a memory I couldn't trust. Now I sit here, typing, trembling, listening to the scratching in the shadows. I don't know if Ellen is downstairs or outside, or if she was ever really here at all. Some nights the darkness takes on a life of its own, and the ones you love become strangers, and the oldest jokes in the world are just warnings, whispered through locked doors. If you ever hear knocking in the small hours, listen closely before you answer. Sometimes the person you trust most is the one you should fear. Sometimes the joke is never really a joke at all, and if someone you love whispers, "Not me," so don't answer the door, believe them. Stay quiet and pray that the knocking passes you by. Keep listening, but don't look over your shoulder. Story 4. House Rules. Some nights something slips into the world that makes even the most ordinary evening feel wrong. You can sense it, at first, as a subtle hush, a tremor in the familiar. It started on a night just like any other. rain tapping the windows. Old board games sprawled out across the coffee table, laughter echoing through a too small apartment. But all it takes is a single word to turn everything upside down. We were four friends, gathered in a haze of old stories and gentle bickering, letting Monopoly sprawl into the early hours. Outside, the city blinked and buzzed, unaware, until it happened. A message, plain, impossible, absolute. It appeared on every screen, hide, black text on a white background, old-fashioned, elegant, inescapable. At first, we tried to laugh it off. Ravi blamed a glitch. Evelyn called it viral marketing. Hero muttered about government tests. I tapped my phone, poked at the stubborn text, tried to power it off. The word would not leave. We looked at each other, the warmth of the night beginning to drain away. Evelyn was the first to say it out loud. Maybe we should actually hide. There was a flicker of fear in her eyes, something unspoken that made us all a little quieter. She found the closet first, ducking behind a row of winter coats, calling us over. I'm going in. If you're my friends, you'll join me. One by one, we followed. The four of us crammed together, knees pressed to knees, breath held, hearts pounding louder than we would ever admit. How long do we stay? 5 minutes, Evelyn guessed. And so we waited, the ticking of the clock slowing, then stopping. Then it was as if the world held its breath. All the familiar sounds faded, traffic, television, the hum of life itself, leaving only a hush, and then a presence, something just outside the closet door, soft as static, cold as shadow. We squeezed our eyes shut and waited. Eventually, the silence lifted. The word was gone from our screens. The world, it seemed, had moved on. We emerged slowly, nerves raw, trying to find our way back to normal. But outside, the city was not the same. Lights flickered in empty apartments. Bodies, blood, silence. Ravi's neighbor Monica was gone, her absence hanging in the hallway like a warning. A new message flashed across the last working screen. Again, we barely spoke. We just ran, scattering into different hiding places, the bed, the laundry closet, the dark utility room. I held the door shut, trembling, as that cold presence swept past again. And then, as suddenly as it had come, it was gone. The message vanished, and we drifted out of hiding, our fear replaced by something colder, suspicion. Another message, break time. We gathered in the living room, dazed, shivering, but something in us had shifted. A hunger, an anger, bubbling just beneath the surface. We eyed each other with suspicion, old resentments swelling, new ones blooming from nowhere. Someone grabbed a kitchen knife. For a moment we were strangers, dangerous, desperate. But the feeling passed. As quickly as it had come, we let the knife fall, shame and relief washing over us. Then another word. Screens shattered all around us. The world outside was falling apart. Blood on the curtains, bodies in the streets, news broadcasts cut off by static and terror, panic, searching, desperation. We needed a screen, a message, a clue. I tore apart the apartment, flinging Monopoly money to the floor, until I found Ravi's old phone buried beneath the chaos. A single word, smile. We did, our faces stretched into brittle masks, fear glinting in our eyes. The word faded, and we sagged in relief, barely holding ourselves together. And then the last message, point to sacrifice. A timer counting down. None of us wanted to choose. None of us wanted to die. We stared at each other, eyes shining with exhaustion and grief. Evelyn pointed to herself first. Flip the board, she whispered, as if that might save us. One by one, the rest of us followed, choosing ourselves rather than each other. But it wasn't enough. At the last moment, I ran to the door and pointed to Monica, Ravi's neighbor, the one who had died before any of us even understood the rules. I'm sorry, I whispered, and the others joined me, our voices trembling with gratitude and guilt. The timer ran out. Nothing happened. Just a new word on the last glowing screen. Good game. We stood in silence, 4 friends changed, but alive. The world outside was silent. No more messages, no more games. We drifted back to the living room, slumping into our old places, Monopoly scattered on the carpet, the city, the night, the universe. Everything outside felt impossibly far away. Someone rolled the dice. It was a 10. Do you want to buy it? Evelyn asked, voice barely above a whisper. I nodded. Sure. Some nights the universe presses its thumb to your life, demanding something you can't quite understand. All you can do is hold tight to the people beside you. Try to follow the rules, even if they keep changing. And when it's over, all you can do is pick up the pieces, start a new game, and pretend that nothing has changed at all. If you ever see a message that says hide, trust your instincts. Some games you only get to play once. Turn down the lights for this next unsettling account. Story 5. What the light reveals. Some gifts are nothing but gentle lies. They promise insight, clarity, and edge against a world that too often hides its shadows. But I know better. I was born with a vision no one asks for, a sight that strips the world bare, leaving me to walk among people wrapped in secrets that glow and flicker and smother like fog. I can see people's auras, and it's ruined every ordinary joy I might have had. And tonight, for the first time, I don't know if I'm strong enough to bear it. You'd never guess it, meeting me. I work a quiet job. I keep to myself. But behind my eyes, the world burns with color. Rings of light that coil around every living person, soft and shifting. Most people don't notice the difference. They think I'm distracted, cold, maybe even a little odd. But the truth is, every time I step outside, I see the real nature of everyone I meet. My parents never believed me, not really. Even as a child, I knew not to tell them what I could see. But I remember my father's aura, a gentle golden shimmer, kind, almost translucent. He was patient, steady, the type to kneel down and tie my shoes with a soft smile, no matter how late he was for work. My mother's aura was a little dimmer, a little more complicated, tinged at the edges with gray. She loved us, but the warmth sometimes flickered. At school, the difference was even clearer. Bullies, mean kids, sometimes even teachers, they wore a heaviness that pressed in on them like smoke, their light nearly smothered. But the good ones, the ones who shared their snacks, who helped me up after a fall, who smiled at strangers, they shone. Sometimes I almost wanted to reach out to touch that light, to see if it was warm. The first time I understood what my sight really meant, I was 8 years old. A boy I knew, small, shy, sweet, wore the dimmest aura I'd ever seen. He sat by himself, lunchbox closed, eyes cast down, and I wondered, did he know? Did he feel the difference? Years later, I read that he'd grown up to be a judge, an arbiter, always in between, but most of the world, I've learned, is neither bright nor dark. Most are somewhere in the middle, grayish, trembling on the edge of choice. 60% of people, if I had to guess, carry a quiet brightness. A quarter are dim, uncertain, wavering, and only a fraction are truly dark. Their auras thick, heavy, swallowing light. 15%, maybe less. I've tested my ability out of curiosity. I visited churches, sat in the last pew, and watched the congregation's halos. I went to concerts, heavy metal, gospel, jazz, the same ratios. I even toured a federal prison, expecting to be overwhelmed by darkness, but half the inmates bright, maybe broken, maybe lost, but not evil. It gave me hope for a while, but my gift has limits. I can't see auras in photos, on screens, or even in mirrors, only face to face, breathing the same air, and never my own. Sometimes when I catch my reflection, I stare and wonder, what do I look like to someone like me? Over the years, I tried to ignore what I saw, tried to live as if I were blind, but the world has a way of reminding you of the things you wish you could forget. The brightest person I ever saw was a woman named Maria. She worked as a social worker, helped at shelters, donated everything she owned, even her own kidney. Her light was so intense it almost hurt to look at her. People gravitated to her, instinctively, as if moths to a lantern. Her presence felt like hope, but the darkest man, I'll never forget him. I was 20, leaving a club in the city, and as I stepped out into the night, I felt the world dim around me. He was a shape at the end of the block, barely visible, but the space around him seemed to drink in the streetlights. He walked like he owned the shadows. When our eyes met, my knees almost buckled. He smiled, a knowing, cruel smile. I saw his mugshot 2 weeks later. He'd murdered his ex-wife and 2 small children. I still dream of his darkness, pressing in, suffocating. For years, I managed to keep my distance. I learned to avoid the darkest auras, to steer clear of their paths, to live quietly in the middle, and then I met her, Sarah. She wasn't the brightest I'd ever seen, but her light was steady, kind, honest. She made me laugh, made me believe I could be normal, if only for a little while. She never knew about my curse, never saw the way I sometimes stared a little too long at the glow around her shoulders. We fell in love, fast, moved in together, filled our tiny apartment with mismatched mugs, stacks of books, lazy weekend mornings tangled in sheets and sunlight. When she told me she was pregnant, I felt something I hadn't in years. A surge of hope, of possibility, a future. Maybe unburdened by all that I'd seen. The pregnancy was smooth, gentle. We painted the nursery pale green, argued over names, built a crib together on a rainy afternoon, laughing at the confusing directions. And then, 2 days ago, everything changed. I woke to my phone buzzing. It's happening. Come to the hospital. I raced through traffic, cursing every red light, the city a blur. The hospital corridors were a maze, every step a lifetime. When I burst into the room, Sarah was there, smiling through sweat and tears. The doctor stood at the foot of the bed, his aura blinding, almost holy. He handed me my son, wrapped in a pale blue blanket, and the world went dark. It wasn't the absence of light, it was an active, suffocating darkness, pouring off the tiny shape in my arms. A void, swallowing all color, all hope. My knees buckled. Sarah thought I was overwhelmed by love. The doctor smiled, mistaking my silence for awe. But I was drowning. I looked into my son's face, searching for something, anything, but he was a shadow, a blank, an absence. That night, at home, the darkness didn't fade. The hallway outside his nursery was dimmer, the air colder. Sarah kept asking if I was okay. I told her I was tired, that everything was fine, but inside, a war was raging. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe it was a trick of the light, a trick of my mind. Maybe he'd change. Maybe. But the gift had never lied before. I started to think about the darkest people in history. What would you do if you could see what they would become before the world ever had a chance to break them? Would you stop them? The next day was worse. I caught myself standing in the hallway, watching the darkness swirl at the nursery door. Sarah caught me once, pillow in hand, trembling. I lied, said I was just tired, just overwhelmed, but the thought kept creeping in. Maybe this is why I was given this curse. Maybe this is my purpose. I sat in my office, watching the gloom stretch, noticing for the first time a faint gray haze around my own hands. Uncertain, immediate, and now the choice is before me, heavy as stone. A pillow on my lap, my son in his crib, silent, swaddled in shadow. Do I do what needs to be done? Or do I wait, hope against hope that the darkness will never take him, that love can reach even the coldest heart? I don't know, but the darkness in the hallway grows thicker, hour by hour, and I'm afraid that no matter what I choose, the world will be changed forever. Some gifts are nothing but burdens, and some choices, once made, can never be unmade. If you could see the future in a child's eyes, if you could sense the weight of evil before it ever touched the world, would you act? Or would you wait, watching the darkness grow, hoping that this time somehow love might be enough? Just when you think it's safe, stories like this surface. Story 6. The Sun Eater, based on the James Webb Telescope, discovered something terrifying in deep space. If you're reading this, I want you to listen carefully, not just with your ears, but with the small nervous part of yourself that still looks up at the night sky and wonders what's out there. 'Cause I have seen things that would break the mind of anyone who believes the universe is a quiet, empty place. Things our governments, our brightest scientists have kept hidden, not to protect their power, but to shield us from a truth so vast and cold it would drive most to despair. We are not alone, but the thing that's coming for us doesn't want to talk. It doesn't want to learn. It only wants to feed. And it's already on its way. Whispers in the void. I work for NASA, or maybe I should say, worked. Officially, I was just another astronomer. Unofficially, I've spent the last 15 years peering into the cosmic darkness, trying to decipher the meaning behind data we were never meant to understand. There are secrets that are dull, bureaucratic, embarrassing, or simply strange. Then there are the ones that linger, like a low hum beneath your skin, pressing against your mind until sleep becomes a stranger. It started almost 30 years ago, with something the world was never told. Back then, Hubble was the cutting edge, our eye on the stars. In '93, a faint star in the outer arm of the galaxy simply vanished. No supernova, no burst of gamma rays, no death throes. One moment it was there, shimmering on the far side of forever, and the next it was gone, not faded, not dim, just erased. We wrote it off, at first, as a fluke, a drift of interstellar dust, a hiccup in the Hubble's ancient sensors. But even then, some of us wondered. Years passed, the world changed. But the sky, for those of us watching, grew quieter. In 2007, 2 more stars flickered out of existence. They were part of a binary system, dancing together for eons, until within the span of 8 hours, each went dark. If it were dust, both would have disappeared at the same time. But this was something else. We combed through the archives. We found 2 more disappearances. 1995, 2002, all in the same stellar neighborhood, separated by handfuls of light years. A pattern was emerging, and it was creeping closer. I remember the late nights, the way my colleagues' voices grew hushed as we pieced together what little we had. Something was moving, fast, too fast for any natural phenomena we'd ever witnessed. Something was blotting out the stars, one after another. But Hubble, for all its glory, wasn't enough. We needed more. We needed the James Webb. The veil lifts. You've probably seen the headlines. The James Webb Space Telescope, a marvel of modern science, capable of peering back to the dawn of time. But the official story is a lie. From the moment it opened its eyes, we pointed it not at the birth of the universe, but at its devouring. We targeted the empty patches where those stars should have been. If there were dust, the Webb would see through it. If the stars had died, we would at least see their remnants, white dwarfs, neutron stars, the echoes of ancient light. But there was nothing, no light, no signal. And yet, the gravitational wave detectors told a different story. The mass was still there. In fact, it was greater than before. It made no sense. And then, as we pushed deeper past the edge of what we thought we knew, we saw the Webb. Filaments of some unknown material stretched between the vanished stars, linking them in a silent cosmic lattice, a structure spanning light years invisible to every instrument, but our most sensitive ones. We argue Dyson spheres, Dyson webs, some vast network for harvesting starlight. The science fiction writers had dreamed of such things, but this was real. It was the mass spectrometer readings that finally broke our certainty. The matter composing the filaments was wrong. Yes, there were traces of hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, magnesium, things we understood, but woven between them were elements that defied every law of physics we held sacred, matter that bent light in impossible ways, that responded to no known force, that should not exist. It was as if the universe itself was being rewritten. The witnessing not long after, the web picked up bursts of energy, violent, savage, at the edge of a system, 12 light years from the last disappearance. We tuned every instrument we had to the conflict. Explosions larger than any nuke humanity could imagine flared in the void, but not the chaos of war. These were precise, measured like the stings of an insect fighting for its life. Through the haze of radiation and shattered planets, we glimpsed the source, the tip of one of the filaments, burrowing into the Oort cloud, reaching for the system's sun. Someone, something, was fighting back. For a week, the battle raged. We watched in horror as weapons we could barely comprehend battered the oncoming darkness. They bought themselves days, maybe hours, and then silence. We all stood there in the control room as the telescope stared at that doomed star. We waited, barely breathing, as the seconds ticked away. A shadow appeared at the edge of the sun, then another, and another. They moved with a purpose, converging in a pattern that was at once alien and eerily familiar. "What are those?" someone whispered. But I remembered childhood afternoons beneath the trees, sunlight filtered through leaves. I remembered the shape, oblong-veined, branching. "They look like leaves," I said, my voice small. No one laughed. We watched, helpless, as the star was devoured, not by a machine, not by some cold, perfect sphere, but by an endless, tangled mass of shadowy leaves and twisting vines, blotting out every last ray of light. Understanding it was a plant, not as we know it, not some dainty thing growing in the soil, a plant so vast, so ancient, that it spans the darkness between worlds, a galactic weed, hunting the suns themselves, starving entire systems to death, leaving nothing but frozen corpses in its wake. The filament, stems, branches, roots, the elements we'd seen: hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, magnesium, chlorophyll. It wasn't building, it was growing, and like any plant, it sought light. We stared at the data for hours, days. Some wept, some raged. Most simply sat, silent, staring at the screens as if they could force the universe to be sane again. One junior scientist, just a kid, really, spoke up at last. "We're seeing a new filament forming," she said, her voice trembling. "It's heading toward our sun." Time froze. The supervisor's voice was flat, distant. "How long?" She did the math, hands shaking. 27 years, she whispered. "If it moves as quickly as the others, 27 years. That's all we have. Secrets and silence." They told us to keep quiet, of course. National security. Mass panic. But the truth is, they don't know what to do either. What good is a secret when the universe itself has already made up its mind? I've watched as colleagues resigned, vanished, some driven mad by the knowledge. I've seen the classified reports, the contingency plans, missiles pointed skyward, wild proposals for fusion-powered laser arrays, for deep space warning beacons, for first contact messages written in the language of fear. But nothing will matter. We are ants on a log, watching the shadow of the forest creep closer, knowing that the sun is setting for the last time. Fly home at night. I sit in my backyard, staring up at the sky. Sometimes I can almost see it, a faint dark tendril slowly, relentlessly reaching out from the abyss, hunting the warm golden heart of our sun. Sarah, my wife, thinks I'm just tired. She brings me tea, kisses my forehead, tells me it will all be okay. I hold her hand, but I cannot tell her. How do you explain that everything she's ever known, every memory, every hope, every sunrise, is already counted down to its end? I watch our daughter play in the grass, her laughter echoing like bird song. She asks me why I look so sad. I smile, and I do not answer. The long night. The truth, I suppose, is that there's a kind of peace in knowing. We spend so much of our lives worrying about things that don't matter. Work, bills, petty arguments. But in the end, the universe is cold, the sun will go out, and no wall of faith or reason or technology will keep the darkness at bay forever. When the day comes, you will know. The sky will dim, not with clouds, but with a shadow that feels ancient and inevitable. Bird song will hush. The air will grow colder, hour by hour, and when the last light is gone, when the world is nothing but frost and silence, remember, it was not our fault. We were only here to witness for a brief, bright moment before the sun was eat. Maybe I'll be gone by the time it happens. Maybe you will too. But if you're still here and the world begins to freeze, don't be afraid. Look up at the sky. Remember the warmth and hold your loved ones close. There is nothing left to fear in the dark. When you know the sun will never rise again, not everything in the dark is asleep. Story 7. A Recipe for Happiness. They say happiness is simple. Just count your blessings. Find joy in small things, and life will brighten like the sunrise after a storm. But sometimes happiness is a recipe you find in the darkest corner of the internet, when you're most desperate to escape yourself. Sometimes happiness is a hungry thing, one that comes when you call and stays until you remember what it's like to feel nothing at all. I learned that the hard way. This is the story of how I tried to bake my way out of sorrow and instead lost the taste of everything that ever mattered. Renfield, my first memory of real happiness, was a dog. I was 10 when we picked him from the pound. Not the sleek husky or the wolfish shepherd. No, I fell for the ugliest creature in the building, a bow-legged teacup chihuahua with prickly fur, a weird, desperate look, and ears that looked stitched on by a madman. He reeked of old corn chips, snapped at flies with comical ferocity, and shivered at the faintest touch. I named him Renfield. Back then, my world was 5 acres of wild forest. My secret kingdom was a hollow in a tangled hedge. Sunlight drifting through leaves and petals, copper and green shadows painting the ground. I'd crawl in with Renfield, stroke him until he fell asleep, then slip out, leaving him to wake alone. The first time I did it, I called his name from outside the hedge, just to see what he'd do. He panicked, of course, yelped and clawed at the brambles, desperate, terrified, until I crawled back inside. He looked at me then like I'd rescued him from the edge of the world, terrified and overjoyed at the same time. I never forgot that look. I saw it again, 18 years later, at the end. Renfield lived longer than any dog deserved. 4 years on medication for a heart that sounded like the tide pulling pebbles across the sand. He was in pain, and I couldn't keep pretending he wasn't. The day I put him to sleep, I was the one who panicked. I cried in the car, in the vet's office, even as I stroked his wiry head and whispered old stories. He was afraid. He always feared tears. Mine most of all. I trapped him again, just like in the hedge, and this time I had to leave him behind. He was my last lifeline, the last thing that made the world seem warm and alive. When he slipped away, it felt like drowning. Parties, my father's shadow grief doesn't start or end with one loss. My dad had been gone in slow motion for years. Alzheimer's first, then cancer, cruel and unstoppable. I stopped visiting near the end, not out of indifference, but mercy. Each time I showed up, he recoiled, unable to place my face, tormented by my tears. I only made things worse. I planned to be there for his last moments, but I wasn't. The day he died, I was at my doctor's office, learning I'd be sick for the rest of my life. That night, I dreamed of the hedge again. Dad was trapped inside, calling for help. I tried to show him the way out, but I was invisible, powerless. I woke up crying. It was my fault somehow. It was always my fault. They're free. The search for relief. I just wanted a break. One day, 1 hour, without pain. So I turned to the internet, scrolling through guided meditations, ASMR, mindfulness, hypnosis, anything promising a way out. Nothing worked, but I couldn't stop looking. The search itself was addictive, like digging for treasure in a haunted house. On the 5th night, I found something odd, an old GeoCities page titled A Recipe for Happiness. It was laughable. A honey cake recipe: mix spit in the batter, bake for 20 minutes, cut in half, eat one half, put the other outside your door, then meditate on a happy memory, someone who made you happy, plan a perfect day, and go to sleep thinking of it all. I was desperate enough to try. I spat in the batter, baked the cake, set half outside in the cold night air. I curled on the couch, ate the other half, and let my mind wander. Renfield, nestled in coppery shadows. Dad's jokes, Mom's songs, the porch in the rain. My dog in my lap as thunder rolled through the trees. As I drifted off, I thought I felt Renfield there, warm and heavy at my feet, breathing softly. The hungry thing. I woke to wait on my pillow. A heavy, hopeful dread bloomed in my chest. When I opened my eyes, it was there. A tiny, filthy thing, curled in a drying pool of blood. 3 milky eyes blinked out of sync over a snout bursting with human teeth. Its breath reeked of honey and decay. It smiled at me, ropes of drool trailing between its jaws. It pressed cold paws to my face. Then it opened its mouth over mine and inhaled. It felt like my lungs, my heart, my memories were sucked out in a rush. Images of Renfield, my father's confusion, my mother's smile, all ripped loose, swirling into the thing's cavernous maw. When it let go, I was empty. Gasped. The thing smiled, bloated and round. "Are you sad?" it croaked, burping softly. I was numb, not sad, not anything. "No," it grinned, poking its belly. "You have no sadness." I have it. Only then did I realize it hadn't eaten my guts, but my feelings. Rage and confusion lingered for a moment, then faded into a satisfied calm. No pain, no sorrow, no weight in my chest. I left it in my room and drove, emotionless, through silent streets. The bargain. I tried to explain it away. Hallucination, break with reality. I checked myself into a hospital, but they found nothing wrong. Why would they? I was calm, blank, at peace. Back home, the thing was waiting. It had shrunk, starved, withered. "I need," it croaked, "or you will suffer again." I knelt, opened my mouth, let it feed. It inhaled every ounce of fresh anger, all the little anxieties I'd picked up outside. And when it finished, I was peaceful again. We fell into routine. Each night, I let it draw out my pain. Each morning, I awoke lighter, emptier. Bad days at work, tension with friends gone before they could take root. I even stopped flinching at photos of my parents or Renfield's empty bed. Weeks blurred into months. The thing, my monster, grew large and round, like a tick bloated with blood. And I was happy in a blank, floating sort of way. Ready. The price. One evening, I realized I hadn't looked at my photos in months. Why not? Nothing in them could hurt me now. After feeding my monster, I browsed through old albums. But the faces, they were strangers. My own childhood, my family, my dog. I recognized them only as distant echoes, ghosts from someone else's story. I knew in some dim corner of myself that something precious had been eaten. Happiness, yes, but also memory. Every sharp, sweet detail of what made me the monster had left me full, but hollow. I decided in that moment that I wanted my pain back. Bush 7, the recipe for sadness. I searched the internet back to the G70's page, searching for a cure. There it was, hidden at the bottom, a recipe for sadness. Bake a cake, but add your own blood. Feed half to your monster, eat the other half. Remember the happy memory you chose before. Then choose one thing to forget, or to never be happy again. Or, as the page warned, don't kill your happiness in the first place. I spent days agonizing. The monster grew ever larger, feeding on the faintest discomfort, but I could not bear to lose any more. Better sorrow than emptiness. So I baked the cake, let my blood drip into the batter, and brought half to the thing. It gobbled it greedily, shrinking with every bite. I felt the pain return, like ice in my veins, sharp and cold. By the time the monster withered to a ball of fur, I was on the floor, sobbing with the force of every memory, and I was alive again. Waking up the world hurts. Now, every day brings fresh aches, sharp regrets, loneliness. Sometimes I wish I'd kept the monster fed, let it keep me in soft, blind happiness forever. But then I remember my father's hand in mine, Renfield's wild eyes shining in the coppery dusk, my mother's laughter in the rain, and I remember that pain, like happiness, is proof I was there, that I loved, and was loved. If you ever find yourself longing for a recipe for happiness, be careful what you bake. Some hungers are never satisfied, and some kinds of happiness are emptier than sorrow. But memory, pain, love, grief, these are the things that make us real, even if it hurts, especially when it hurts. Sometimes the scariest things happen when you least expect them. Story 8, Instructions for the Babysitter. If you've ever babysat for wealthy families, you know there's a certain charm to the job. Quiet houses, polite children, and the feeling that for a few hours you're living inside someone else's good fortune. But sometimes the quietest houses hold secrets. Sometimes the best behaved children need protection from more than just bad dreams. And sometimes you're handed a list of instructions, and if you don't follow them, you may never leave the house at all. Our brother, the house at the end of the trees. I was only 6 months into babysitting, just enough experience to be comfortable, just enough money to make me eager for more. The rich side of town had become my gold mine. Easy jobs, easy money. But that Thursday, when Miss Collins texted me about watching her daughter overnight in their woodland estate, I had no idea how much those words would haunt me. The drive was longer than I expected. The entrance to the property was hidden in a tangle of ancient trees, and the narrow driveway snaked upward, deeper and deeper, until the woods muffled every sound of the world behind me. By the time the mansion emerged, tall, shadowed, a Victorian giant with brick the color of drying leaves, I already felt a chill that didn't belong to the weather. Mrs. Collins greeted me at the front door, composed, beautiful, with an exhaustion behind her eyes that money couldn't mask. Mr. Collins appeared moments later, carrying their daughter Samantha in his arms. She looked like a porcelain doll, hair perfectly combed, eyes wide and shining in the soft light. They were polite, almost hurried, as if they were escaping rather than leaving for a night out. Mrs. Collins pressed a thick bundle of papers into my hand. Our instructions, she said, her voice low. Please read them carefully. They didn't linger for goodbyes. I watched their taillights vanish into the trees before closing the door, suddenly aware of how alone I was. I tucked the instructions into my pocket and turned to Samantha. She smiled, shy at first, but soon we were watching cartoons and giggling over microwave popcorn. For a while the house felt almost normal. A list of warnings. It wasn't until dusk that I remembered the instructions. The sunlight faded fast through the old windows, and the rooms grew large and cold. I unfolded the papers, expecting a list of favorite snacks or bedtime rituals. Instead, I found something stranger, something that felt more like a ritual than a routine. Hello, Annie. Thank you for caring for Samantha tonight. Our home is old and full of history, but as long as you follow these instructions, you'll be perfectly safe. What? Samantha must be in bed with her door locked before 8 p.m. Do not open her bedroom door after 8 o'clock, no matter what you hear. She may cry or plead, but do not let her out. She cannot hurt you if the door stays closed. 2. Between 8:30 and 9:30, remain in the living room with all lights on. You may hear scratching or growling from Samantha's room or elsewhere. Do not investigate. Stay in the light. 3. After 9:30, do not enter any dark area of the house. Turn on as many lights as possible. You may see things hiding in the shadows, and they may try to speak to you. Do not engage. If you see yellow cat eyes, do not stare for more than 30 seconds. 4. At 10 o'clock, you may hear footsteps in the basement. Stay out of the basement at all costs. If you feel an urge to go downstairs, drink cold milk in the kitchen until it passes. If the urge does not pass, call up. If a man with a deep voice answers, hang up immediately. 5. At 10:30, you'll hear something running in the upstairs hallway. Stay on the first floor. If you hear it coming down the stairs, lock yourself in the first floor bathroom with the lights on. It may knock and try to impersonate someone you love. Do not open the door until 5 minutes have passed. Check beneath the door before leaving. Before you sleep, leave a plate with raw steak and a glass of milk outside the guest room door. Write Parkan Mihai in red ink and place it with the food. If you wake in the night and see a figure in the corner, do not look at it. Earbuds are recommended to block out any muttering. General rules: do not answer the house phone at any time. We will call your cell if needed. If something taps your shoulder, do not turn around. Wait 30 seconds before moving. Do not eat meat after 8 o'clock p.m. They may see it as a threat. If you hear a dog whimpering, ignore it. We do not have a dog. By the time I finished reading, my hands were shaking. It felt like a joke, elaborate but not quite funny. 3. Nightfall and locks. I glanced at the clock. 7:45 p.m. Samantha, it's time for bed, I said, my voice trembling despite myself. She didn't protest. Instead, she looked at me with a quiet urgency. Don't forget to lock my door before you leave, she said, eyes fixed on mine. I hesitated, fumbling with the latch that locked from the outside. Why does your mom lock your door? I tried to keep my voice light. Samantha shrugged, eyes drifting toward the window. She says it's to keep me safe. She says I try to leave at night, but it's not really me. That chilled me more than I cared to admit. I kissed her forehead, closed the door, and slid the heavy latch into place. It clicked loudly in the hush. Downstairs, I turned on every light I could find. The house, enormous and maze-like, felt suddenly too vast for one person. It was nearly 8:30 when the first sounds started, scratching from upstairs, then something like a low growl echoing through the vents. I sat rigid on the living room couch, TV on but muted. The noise moved from one room to another, sometimes above me, sometimes behind the walls. At 8:47, Samantha started screaming, high desperate pleading for me to unlock the door. I pressed my hands to my ears and recited the instructions over and over. Do not open the door. Do not open the door. Her voice changed, roughening, guttural, and animal. Then silence. AV. The house wakes up by 9:30. The growling had faded, replaced by whispers from the corners of the room. I noticed the darkness in the hallways had grown thick, almost liquid, and sometimes I caught glimmers of movement, yellow eyes winking, mouths forming in the shadows. I turned on more lights, heart pounding, but still the darkness seemed to creep closer, licking the edges of the safety I'd created. Somewhere, a phone began to ring, long, shrill, an old house phone buried in some distant room. I didn't move. My cell stayed clutched in my lap, as if it might anchor me to the world outside. At 10 o'clock, footsteps thudded from the basement. Slow, deliberate. The urge to go downstairs came with a sickening force, as if invisible hands were pushing me to the cellar door. Milk, I remembered. I stumbled to the kitchen, poured a glass, and drank it with shaking hands. The urge dulled but did not vanish entirely. I thought of calling Mrs. Collins, but the memory of that warning, if a deep voice answers hang up, made me hesitate. The thing on the stairs at 10:30, the running began. Rapid footsteps, back and forth along the upstairs hallway, then pausing, then starting again, each time a little louder, a little closer to the staircase. I sat frozen until I heard it on the stairs, heavy and fast, thumping closer. I bolted for the bathroom, slammed the door, and twisted the lock. The knocking began immediately, sharp, insistent. A voice came from the other side, sweet and familiar, my mother's voice. "Annie, sweetheart, let me in. It's cold out here." I pressed my fists to my ears and rocked in place, reciting the instructions. "Don't listen, don't answer. 5 minutes." The voice changed. My father, my best friend, my own voice. When the knocking finally stopped, I waited, breathless, before peering under the door. Nothing. Wait. The guest room after midnight. I crept upstairs to the guest room. Arms full raw steak, a glass of milk, a note written in red ink. "Pardon me." I set the plate outside the door, heart thundering. Inside, I pushed a chair against the knob and crawled beneath the heavy covers. The house was silent, except for the distant, irregular sound of something tapping on the walls, the floorboards, the glass. I put in my earbuds as instructed and squeezed my eyes shut. At some point, I must have dozed. But in the deepest part of the night, I woke to a cold draft and the feeling of being watched. I didn't look, but I could feel it. A figure in the corner, just beyond the edge of my vision. It muttered softly, a sound like words half remembered from a nightmare. I lay perfectly still until dawn crept through the curtains, painting the walls with pale light. The figure was gone. The plate outside my door was empty. The glass of milk was drained. By dawn by morning, the house was quiet again. I unlocked Samantha's door. She blinked up at me, sleepy and normal. "Did you have a good night?" she asked, as if nothing had happened. I smiled, but it felt thin and brittle. Downstairs, I found the instructions where I'd left them, ink smeared, fingerprints like shadows pressed into the paper. When Miss Collins returned, she didn't ask how my night had gone. She paid me far too much and thanked me for following her rules. As I left the house, the trees seemed to lean closer, whispering secrets I was glad not to understand. Sometimes the scariest thing about babysitting isn't the dark, or the loneliness, or even the ghosts that might wander old hallways. It's the realization that some rules aren't meant to be broken, and some instructions are the only thing standing between you and the darkness waiting in the walls. Ready for something a little darker? Listen closely. Story 9. Drive safe. They say you never really know who's protecting you until you need it most. For years, I thought I was the one saving my dog from the world, giving her a home, a name, a place to belong. But in the quiet hours after midnight on an empty highway, sometimes it's the least glamorous creatures, the ones the world would overlook, who save you in return. Don't, Lulu, if you ask me about my ex, I'll tell you he left me with almost nothing, except for Lulu. He never cared for her. He said she was too ugly to love, too scrappy to belong in our curated little life. But in the end, that meant she was all mine. Lulu wasn't one of those dogs you see in viral videos. She was squat, funny looking, with a boulder of a head and short, stumpy legs. Her tail wagged crooked, and her coat was a patchwork of rough fur and old scars. She snored and sneezed and chewed her own leash if I let her, and yet she was the only soul that seemed to understand what it meant to want to belong. When the end came, it was abrupt. My ex packed his things, left me sobbing over a bowl of cereal gone to mush, and didn't look back. He took the furniture, the car, the comfort. I took Lulu. Sometimes what you're left with is all you truly need. Irate. The leaving, I packed my few possessions into a rattling too-big U-Haul van, pots, photos, threadbare clothes, a battered suitcase, and one loyal dog. It looked almost comical in the wide, empty space, as if I were a child running away with only her favorite things. We left before dusk, heading for my sister's house across the state. Lulu sat shotgun, eyes fixed out the window, as if she was the lookout for the two of us. The road unfurled ahead, golden fields and distant barns giving way to the soft gray of evening. As the sky deepened, the loneliness pressed in. The radio faded to static. The only sound was Lulu's gentle breathing and the humming of tires. Every so often she'd rest her head on my knee and sigh, her eyes heavy but watchful. I tried not to think about what I'd lost. I told myself we were running towards something better, not away from the ruins of a life someone else had abandoned. Sorry, trouble on the road. It happened just as the sun dipped below the ridges, an ugly metallic clatter under my feet. The wheel jerked in my hands. The van started to shudder. Lulu whined, pressing herself against the passenger door. I managed to guide us to the shoulder, where an old sign flashed in the darkness. Richard Son's Auto Repair, 1/4 mile. There's a certain kind of dread that comes with being alone on a dark highway, broken down, the world reduced to shadows and silhouettes. I checked the doors, locked them tight, and waited until Lulu gave a small bark, a reassurance or maybe a warning before we set out toward the glowing lights of the garage. Inside, the place was bright and warm, a little oasis carved out of the country dark. Richard, the owner, was kind. His sons, Abel and Dean, were opposites. Abel quiet, almost ghostly pale. Dean all movie star charm and easy smiles. They joked with me, fussed over Lulu, called her bodyguard and sweetheart, and let her sniff the corners of the office. She stayed close, only relaxing when the older man scratched behind her ears. Something in her posture told me she'd learned who to trust. As they checked my van, Richard's voice dropped low. He told me about the women found dead along the highways. 7, all young, all alone. Keep your dog close, he said, and drive safe. His eyes were tired, but revive. The waiting while Dean and Abel worked on the van, Richard and I sat in the quiet of the office. I told him about starting over, about heartbreak, about how Lulu had always known when to press her nose into my lap and offer silent comfort. He spoke of his wife, now gone, and the hollow ache that came after. How grief lingers in a house, in a family, in the hours between dusk and dawn. Lulu curled at my feet, her tail gently thumping whenever Richard spoke softly to her. It was the kind of peace that only lasts a moment. I felt it slipping through my fingers, even as I tried to hold on. When the van was fixed, Abel handed me the keys, his eyes lingering on mine a little too long. Drive safe, he said, voice soft and strange. Uve. The long dark back on the road. The sky was black and bottomless. Lulu started to tremble. She barked at the passing fields short, warning bursts that made my heart race. I pressed onward, headlights swallowed by the tunnel of trees. There was a silence to the dark, a heaviness, as if something was watching from the woods. I tried the radio, static. I tried humming, but my voice sounded small. Lulu's barking grew desperate, scratching at the window, growling low. The darkness outside felt alive, pulsing, hungry. I remembered Richard's story, the missing women, the warning. My hands gripped the wheel, cold and slick with fear. I whispered to Lulu, told her it was okay, but I don't think I believed it. When we finally crossed into South Carolina and the world began to glow again, bright lights, gas stations, neon signs, Lulu relaxed, but never completely. She watched every shadow, every passing car, as if she alone stood between us and the night, the arrival. It was past 3 a.m. when we reached my sister's house. I pulled into the curb too tired to cry, too tired to feel anything but the ache of relief. I reached for my bag, glanced at Lulu, and froze. Her ears were up. She stared at the back of the van, body stiff as stone. A deep, ragged breathing filled the air. Not hers, not mine. From somewhere in the dark, behind our boxes and bags, something was alive. I fumbled for my phone, hands shaking, trying to dial 911. Lulu pressed herself against my legs, teeth bared, a low growl rising from her chest. And then the back door clicked, slow and careful. It swung open with a creak that split the quiet, and out fell a man, a mess of limbs, wild eyes, sweat and blood and hatred. Dean? He stood up, a knife glinting in his hand, a smile twisted and wrong on his lips. All night, he sneered, that mutt wouldn't stop barking. Bark, bark, bark. Ruined everything. I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Lulu leapt between us, hackles up, teeth flashing. The operator on the phone was asking for my address, but my voice was lost in terror. Dean stepped forward, waving the knife. I should kill you both. Do the world a favor. He lunged. Lulu met him midair, a blur of fur and fury. I saw the knife slash, heard her yelp, but she didn't stop. She bit down hard, and Dean screamed, dropping the blade. I ran, scooped Lulu into my arms, and stumbled toward the porch, dialing my sister, dialing the police, dialing anyone who could break the nightmare. 7. The aftermath. A severed hand is enough for DNA. That's what the detectives said when they came to take our statements in the hospital days later. Dean was a monster, they told me, responsible for the missing women. Abel, his silent brother, had helped. Their father, Richard, had no part. He was just a grieving man, trying to keep his family whole. I watched the news from my sister's couch. Lulu curled beside me, her stitches running in jagged lines along her back. The world called her a hero. The doctors called her a miracle. I just called her mine. They held a ceremony for her outside the animal hospital. Reporters came, police officers patted her head, children brought her treats and handmade cards. Lulu wagged her tail, blinked in the sunlight, and seemed as uninterested in her fame as she was in her own reflection. That night, for the first time, I let her sleep on the bed. She circled 3 times, curled up by my legs, and rested her head on my thigh. Comfy? I asked. She huffed, half purr, half growl. Get used to it, I whispered into the dark, running my fingers over her warm fur. You've more than earned it. And for the first time since we'd left everything behind, I slept without fear, because sometimes what you save is what saves you. The world is dark and lonely sometimes, but if you're lucky, you find someone who will fight for you even when you don't have the strength left for yourself. For me, that someone was Lulu Ugly, loyal, brave. Sometimes the very best heroes are the ones nobody else wants. Dare to listen to this next tale? Story 10. We made the rules. If you live in an old dorm long enough, you start to believe in the ghosts. Not the rattling chains and floating bedsheets kind, but something quieter. A presence, the hush that clings to corners, the way rules get whispered from one year to the next. They say every dorm has its secrets. I never believed that, until the night our own joke rules started coming true. One, a game becomes a ritual. It started like so many mistakes do, with boredom and too much time. My boyfriend Brian and I, both RAs at Millard Hall, were trading ghost stories and Reddit posts on a gray autumn afternoon. trying to outdo each other with weirder dorm rules tales. You know the kind. If someone knocks at 3:11 a.m., yowl like a cat, but don't open the door. If you see a movie poster appear in the hallway overnight, never go to the screening. It was a genre all its own. So, for laughs, we started inventing rules for Millard. The more absurd, the better. If you see someone picking their nose, chant, "Snot, snot, thanks a lot," or you'll get their booger tomorrow. Only penny the door of 307 with coins from 2002, or you'll sleep through your next test. Brian wrote them down as we riffed, stacking consequences on consequences, each rule growing stranger than the last. I was the one who suggested we turn it into a prank, slide copies under the freshmen's doors late at night. Double plus unprofessional for an RA, but it felt harmless. No one would believe it. So we hammered out a list, rules only, no consequences spelled out, letting imaginations do the rest. Never buy Diet Pepsi right after Diet Dew from the lobby machine. If someone howls in the courtyard between 2 and 3 a.m., don't turn on any lights. Don't reheat Patsy's pizza in the oven. Don't drink from the lobby fountain if sunlight is on the button. If you find a dollar bill starting with J804, spend it off campus. I printed them out on plain white paper, folded each into a neat pamphlet, and one night we scattered them under doors, laughing, hearts racing, like kids playing at ghosts. I'm dorm life. Tainted. What we didn't count on was how fast stories spread. By the next morning, the rules were everywhere. Students nervously bought root beer before Diet Pepsi, skipped the oven for the microwave, eyed the water fountain with suspicion. Someone stuck a Post-it to the Pepsi machine, stick me on last button pressed. People started believing. Other RAs played along. Stella from 3 North deadpanned. Last time someone broke one, we never saw him again. A joke, right? Except by then, even I was feeling the mood shift. I escalated it, printing more copies, even making posters on green and orange paper. I added new rules, blue bathroom, room 307, each with their own superstitions. Then came the first accident. 3 rules with teeth rosy. An RA determined to debunk the whole thing, deliberately broke the Diet Pepsi rule. She chugged a can right after someone bought a Diet Dew, just to show it was nonsense. She collapsed in the lobby minutes later, hands and feet swollen, fingernails spurting blood. I'll never forget the sound, her gasps, the screaming, the ambulance siren wailing into the early morning. I sat, shocked, in a splash of blood on the sidewalk, trying to convince myself it couldn't be the rules. But in my heart, fear crept in, cold and real. A day later, Celia, a freshman, lost 3 fingers to the vending machine. One of my fake J804 bills had jammed it. She wanted a cinnamon roll. The machine's panel opened and bit her. People nearby swore they heard growling, music, the lights flickering blue. I sent the rest of the marked bills home, erased all files from my laptop, but it was too late. Brian, oddly, just seemed thrilled. I fit. The howler and the missing on Friday night. I heard it, the courtyard howl like a dozen animals at once, echoing up the concrete stairwells. No one dared turn on a light. A freshman, Carla, pounded on my door at 3 a.m., pale and shaking. Rayma turned on the lamp. She whispered, eyes wide. Now she's gone. We found her room empty. She never came back. Somebody answered the payphone and bashed their own ear bloody. A pizza box in the oven sent a guy vomiting blood and worms. People started carrying the rules around like talismans, crossing themselves before entering the bathroom if the sun hit the water fountain button. The dorm felt wrong, shadowy, as if the air itself had thickened, bristling with watchful, invisible eyes. Wait, confession in the dark. Brian and I stopped speaking. He came to my room in the middle of the night, a haunted look in his eyes. "You're gonna get a visit," he told me, voice low. "The circle. Real witches, not kids playing dress up. I did a spell, made the rules real. For them, I didn't want to believe him, but he seemed changed, more excited than scared. I told him to leave, but he spent the night on my spare bed, afraid to go outside. The next morning, he was gone. No one's seen him since. Free, my own rule days passed. The air in the dorm grew colder, heavier, as if the walls themselves were listening. One morning I found my bathroom walls painted a powdery blue. Blue bathroom was an orange rule, the kind you were never supposed to follow. I panicked, rifling through old pamphlets. The instructions said to prick my finger, spread blood around the sink's rim, or someone would die. I did it, trembling, not knowing if I believed or not. The next morning, the walls were white again, but I couldn't shake the dread. Baffling. Conclusion. Living with it, the rules kept working their poison. More people hurt. Another vanished. The payphone rang, and everyone in the hall shuddered. By now, no one thought it was a joke, but nobody knew who'd started it. I walk the halls at night, listening for footsteps behind me. Sometimes I hear whispering from empty rooms, or a soft knock on a door just past midnight. Somebody moved the rules pamphlet to my pillow the other day, and the old payphone rang just as I touched it. I haven't seen Brian again, and the circle, if they're real, haven't come for me yet. So I'm writing this as a warning. Don't make up rules in a place already haunted by its own. If you find yourself in Millard Hall, and you see a pamphlet with rules that make no sense, read them carefully, and whatever you do, don't break the rules. 3. Ending soft whisper out. Sometimes a joke is just a joke, and sometimes you write the story, only to discover it was already being written for you. I still live here. Every night I close my door, check the walls, and listen for the howl. I follow the rules, even the ones I made up, because now they belong to the building, and so do I. If you're feeling brave, here's a tale for you. Story 11, True Crime, Sarah Campbell. Every night I walked the same route home beneath the streetlights. City rain hushing the world to a dull, safe blur. It became a ritual, just me, the sidewalk, and my favorite true crime podcasts, whispering from my headphones, stories to keep me company in the darkness. Tonight, there was a new episode. Tonight, something felt wrong, long before I understood why. Routine. The rain was soft, falling steady over Franklin's empty streets. Shops were shuttered, their windows glowing faint and blue. I tugged my hood a little tighter, red sneakers splashing through puddles as I waited for the signal to change. My phone buzzed. A new episode from my favorite podcast appeared. Strange. It wasn't on the schedule. Still, curiosity won. I pressed play, and a soothing baritone voice filled my ears. It was a small town, the kind where everyone knows your name, the kind of town where nothing ever happens, until it does. The words washed over me, familiar enough. I let myself relax, matching each step to the gentle rhythm of the host's storytelling, unearthing echoes at the crosswalk. The world paused under a red glow. A black SUV drifted past, headlights slicing the rain. Inside the corner deli, blue refrigerator lights flickered, illuminating chairs stacked on tables. The world shut down for the night. That chilly September evening was no different for the young student. She left her shift at the local store and walked home, except she never made it home. A chill pricked my skin. I worked at the local store. I was a student at Franklin Community College. But true crime stories always sounded personal, didn't they? Everyone was the girl next door. I stepped forward when the signal turned, watching my shadow stretch before me. Her boyfriend reported her missing the next day. The town searched for 2 days, until they found something. I stopped, waited for her body. Instead, a pair of size 9 red Converse sneakers washed up on the shore of Worthington Lake. I looked down. Red Converse. Size 9. Raindrops spattered the canvas, turning them darker. The voice continued, calm, relentless. The shoes were sent to a forensic analyst, compared to another pair owned by the victim. A car's engine revved softly. I turned just a black SUV at the intersection. Slow, deliberate. I watched its taillights fade. A coincidence. Just a story. My heart pounded anyway. The results were conclusive. The shoes belonged to Sarah Campbell. My name. The world narrowed. The rain a soft hiss in my ears. 3. Unraveling, I tried to walk faster, but my feet felt heavy, glued to the wet concrete. The lake search yielded nothing. No body, no signs. But then, a witness saw a black SUV parked by the shore, just past 2 a.m. The SUV. No, that was impossible. 6 black SUVs in the area matched the description, but one stood out. A car owned by John Kelly, a registered sex offender. A low growl of an engine behind me. I glanced over my shoulder. Headlights, pale and blurred by rain, floated down the block, keeping pace. The voice droned on. Kelly's prior victim? A woman with multiple piercings, short dark hair, just like Sarah. My breath hitched. I veered down a side street, the world shrinking, shops melting away into darkness. The headlights followed, slower now, not chasing, just watching, confident. I sprinted. My house appeared, the only island of yellow light in the gloom. I fumbled my keys, heart hammering, and slammed the door behind me, sliding the deadbolt home. In the dark, alone inside, the house felt enormous. The podcast still played, its volume almost a whisper now, echoing off the kitchen tile. I checked the windows, the locks, pressing my back to the door as tears pricked my eyes. My phone was still playing. Quietly, I set it down in the bathroom, grabbing tissues with trembling hands. Click. I jumped. The podcast had skipped forward. A new voice now, someone familiar. What do you think happened to Sarah? I froze. Well, she told me she wanted to run away before gay. My boyfriend's voice, unmistakable, coming from the podcast. She said she wasn't happy with her grades, her job, her parents. She dreamed of leaving it all behind. I'd never said that. The bathroom light buzzed overhead. I stared at my reflection, rainwater trickling down my cheeks. That was hurtful to me. I thought we'd get married someday, but apparently she didn't feel the same. My heart thudded against my ribs. Why was Gabe saying these things? Why was he on the podcast? So you think she skipped town, rather than being abducted or murdered? Then, yes, that's exactly what I think. The outro music started, cheerful, out of place in the silent, cold house. Something at the door. My thoughts spun, unraveling. What did this mean? Was Gabe hiding something, lying about me? My hands trembled as I reached for my phone. To call him. The front door creaked. Footsteps. I held my breath, listening as the floorboards groaned. Sarah. I'm back. I backed away, pressing into the bathroom wall, breath tight in my chest. Sarah? His voice gentle, moving closer. My gaze darted to the window. I fumbled with the latch, pushing it open, cold night air spilling in. Outside, the rain had stopped. The world was silent, waiting. I climbed out, heart racing, my red Converse silent on the wet grass. I didn't look back. Some stories are just stories, some warnings, just warnings. But some stories reach through the headphones, crawl into your life, and refuse to let go. Tonight I listened to a true crime podcast on my walk home, and now I'm running into the darkness, listening for footsteps, wondering if I was ever just a listener, or if I've always been the next episode. Sometimes the scariest things happen when you least expect them. Story 12, Lily Madwip sees the future. My name is Lily Madwip, and sometimes I see things before they happen. Not the big, world-shattering things, just moments. Little flashes of tomorrow, a dropped glass, a sudden phone call, the way sunlight will fall on a rainy afternoon. And sometimes, like today, something much worse. Family in a car. And the weight of knowing we're on the highway, all four of us squeezed into our old station wagon, the world drifting by in long, slow streaks of pine trees and distant thunderheads. My brother Roger is beside me, sprawling into my space, calling me ass face, and poking my arm just hard enough that Mom turns her head around, eyes in the rear view flashing that look that means enough. Roger doesn't care. He's 6 years older and thinks he's untouchable. He doesn't know what's coming, because if he did, he'd be a whole lot nicer to me. Right now. Don't stare at me, ass face, Roger mutters.
I just hugged my doll Pescar, whose head sits at a gentle, crooked angle. Roger twisted it off last year, and Mom never quite fixed it right.
The radio mumbles quietly, playing some song I don't know. Dad's knuckles are white on the steering wheel. We're heading somewhere. It doesn't matter where. Every highway trip is the same. Windows cracked, wind smelling faintly of road salt and old McDonald's bags. There's a sign up ahead. Rest area 1 mile next rest area 46. Miles I don't have to go. I lie even though my legs are crossed and my stomach is tight from the Sprite I finished hours ago. I know what's supposed to happen here, what's going to happen, and if I can just keep us moving, maybe I can stop it. But Roger, always eager to ruin things, pipes up. Lily has to go. I don't want her pissing on me. He makes a face. Mom glances back, her mouth tight, and Dad flicks on the blinker, guiding us toward the ramp. The rest stop, and the ticking clock. The rest area sits quiet and lonely atop a little hill. Families come and go, doors slamming, children giggling, the faint roar of distant trucks. There's a big rock on a pedestal with a plaque full of dead people's names. Maybe the rock will fall, I think. Maybe that's how it happens. I clutch Pashar tight and follow Mom into the restroom, the air cold and metallic, the toilets too loud and eager to flush. I flinch every time, certain I'll be sucked away. But nothing happens in the restroom. Roger is alive and sulking when we regroup by the lobby's glass doors. Dad is impatient, itching to get back on the road. I want to look at a brochure for a zoo, but Mom pulls me along. Back in the car, I exhale, almost hopeful. Maybe today the future will change. 3. Roger and the doll. The moment arrives. We're not back on the highway. A minute before Roger does what Roger always does. He grabs Pashar from my arms, waving him out the window, the wind tugging at the doll's twisted head. Want to see if your dolly can fly? Roger grins, cruel and excited. The sun is low, painting everything gold and long-shadowed. This is when you die, I whisper to him, voice trembling, trying to warn, to stop, to change the shape of what's coming. But Roger just sneers and lets go. Pashar falls, vanishing under the wheels, and I scream, not for Roger, but for my doll, for the only friend who understands me. Mom is yelling, Dad is yelling, Roger is blaming me, as always, but I'm the only one looking out the window. I see the lane merging. I see the truck, a monster of steel and headlights barreling toward us with nowhere to go. My voice is lost in the storm of anger and confusion. No one hears me, not even Dad, whose eyes flick to the mirror just as the world turns sideways. Metal against metal, glass shattering, the universe folding into noise and light. Evil, the aftermath. And the weight that never leaves hospitals are cold, always cold. My dad is there, arm in a sling, face bruised and eyes lost. My mom is crying. She hugs me a little tighter than before, like she's trying to squeeze out all the sadness. Roger is gone. He didn't get to fly in the helicopter. Not really. He wasn't awake for it. I hold Pashkar in my lap. He came back to me, just like always, a little dirtier, a little more broken, but still here. No one wants to talk about what happened. No one wants to hear what I know, that I saw it all before it came, that I tried to change it and couldn't. Dad looks at me with a weight in his eyes as if I'm the reason the world broke open. I know he thinks it, even if he doesn't say it. Mom hugs me tighter at bedtime, as if love could be armor, and Pasha whispers to me in the quiet, telling me secrets about what comes next. He tells me Roger isn't in a better place. Pasha is always right. Sometimes knowing what's coming doesn't change a thing. Sometimes the future is a shadow you can't outrun. I see things before they happen, but not even I can save the people I love. Tonight I hold Pasha close and listen for the next secret the world wants to tell me. Another secret, hidden just beneath the surface. Story 13. The Notes in the Empty House. The first note seemed innocent enough, just a scribbled reminder taped to my fridge in a hand I didn't recognize. But in the hush of my empty apartment, the handwriting didn't belong to me or anyone I knew. I shrugged it off because that's what you do at first. But the notes kept coming. And soon the quiet in my home became a different kind of silence. One filled with secrets only I could see. Worry, an empty house, and the first note, it was just after sunrise when I found it. The little yellow square, gently fluttering with the fridge door's draft. Don't forget your keys, it said, in a looping, unfamiliar script. I held it for a while, confused. I lived alone. The handwriting wasn't mine, or my mother's, or my old roommates from back home. But loneliness is a thick fog, and sometimes it's easier to toss things away than wonder how they appeared. I crumpled up the note and started my day. Io. The messages multiply a few days later. Another note, this time pink, perched on my kitchen counter. Make sure to pack a lunch today. Odd. I almost laughed, but some part of me, deep and soft. Listen, I packed a lunch that morning for the first time in weeks. That afternoon, the cafeteria was closed. Broken fridge, they said, all the food spoiled. I ate my lunch at my desk, staring at the sticky note in my bag. Somewhere inside me, a seed of unease began to sprout. And then the notes came more often. Always gentle, always right. Take I-80. Today, there will be a bad accident on your way home. Janet is going to offer you cookies at the office. Politely decline. They will give you food poisoning. Marie has been on a diet. Compliment her on her weight loss. She'll end up thinking well of you. At first, I ignored them, a kind of stubborn pride. But every time I did, something went wrong. I got caught in a rainstorm, or sat in traffic, or found myself sick after eating a cookie. It was as if the notes could see a few steps ahead, like a shadow passing over the future. 3. A quiet reliance, a hidden guardian. I tried writing notes back, asking questions. Who are you? What do you want? No answer ever came. I set up hidden cameras, wanting to catch whoever was doing this. But the next morning, I found the cameras gutted on the kitchen table. A note beside them, the same delicate writing. Never do that again. For a while the note stopped. The world felt colder, heavier, as if I'd lost an invisible friend. Work was hard again, and each bad thing that happened seemed like proof that I'd chased my luck away. Then, one morning, a new green sticky note on my bathroom mirror. Don't forget to call Mom today. It is her birthday. I laughed, then almost cried. Whatever this was, I needed it. I stopped searching for answers. I stopped asking questions. My life improved. I felt lighter, more confident. I made friends at work, and almost impossibly, I met Amanda. Amanda and a sudden shift. Amanda was a sunbeam in my cloudy little life. Funny, sharp, the kind of person who makes you want to become someone worth loving. Long auburn hair, a lemon-bright laugh. Someone who fit in the space the loneliness had left behind. She invited me over for dinner one Saturday night. Her best spaghetti. I was nervous and happy, humming as I got ready. That's when I found a new note. Hot pink. Sitting on the kitchen counter. Kill your girlfriend. I stared at it for a long, trembling moment. A joke? A mistake? I crumpled it, heart pounding. and left for her place. In the car, I flipped down my visor to check my reflection. A green sticky note drifted out and landed in my lap. Kill Amanda. Take the gun from your glove box and shoot her. I felt cold all over. My hands shook. I thought of the little handgun in my glove box kept for emergencies, never touched. I ignored the note, walking up to Amanda's door with a numb, desperate hope that I was overreacting. She opened the door and smiled, but her face fell when she saw me. "You okay, Gary?" I lied, blaming my face on a stomachache. Inside, she set a bowl of spaghetti before me, worry in her eyes. As she turned away to fetch drinks, I slipped my hands into my pockets. Another note, crumpled tight, hidden in my right pocket. Take your chair and bash her head in. In my left pocket, 2 more, pressed flat with sweat. Do not eat the spaghetti. Drugged? What's that, Gary? Amanda called from the kitchen. I mumbled an excuse, voice cracking. She returned with her own bowl, sitting close, her soft brown eyes watching me. Eat up, silly, she urged, but I felt dizzy, unable to move. I need to use your bathroom, I blurted, bolting from the table. She followed, knocking at the door, worry twisting her voice. Gary, are you okay? Please talk to me. I slumped against the bathroom wall, pulling out the final note, the one I didn't want to read. She is not Amanda. The house outside the bathroom was quiet, Amanda's voice distant and muffled. The notes, once a comfort, now twisted into warnings, commands, secrets I never wanted to hear. I sat in the hush, clutching those scraps of paper, wondering if any of it, Amanda, my luck, my happiness had ever been real at all. And outside, the knocking went on and on. There's something about the darkness that brings out stories like this. Story 14. The letter my father left behind. It took me almost 2 years to open the envelope. 2 years of letting it sit in a drawer, tucked under my pillow, or pressed between pages of old yearbooks. I told myself I was waiting until I was ready, but the truth is, there's no preparing for the secrets that come after a loss. Sometimes you have to sit in the quiet, listen to the ache, and hope that opening a letter will finally set you free. The last goodbye. The day my father dropped me off at college is burned into my memory. Boxes in the back seat, laughter echoing in the empty dorm, my dad's arms around my shoulders, both of us pretending the world wasn't changing. Remember, we're a team, he whispered, voice thick with emotion. Together there's nothing we can't handle. I watched him drive away, headlights disappearing down the highway, and I didn't know that would be the last time I'd see him alive. That night, I waited for his usual text, made it home, proud of you, sleep well, but my phone stayed silent. Morning arrived, gray and cold, no messages, no calls, just a sinking dread, an intuition only daughters know. I called, straight to voicemail, the same cheerful message he'd had for years. Hey Dad, it's just checking in. Call me back, okay? Love you. Hours crawled by. No word. My hands shook as I dialed my uncle, then the highway patrol, then the local police, each one brushing me off, telling me not to worry. But I knew. By noon, I was already driving home, the world blurring outside my window. I went, the house and the silence. The house was quieter than I'd ever known. No music from the kitchen, no television hum, just the long groans of old wood, as if the house itself mourned with me. His keys were there, his wallet, but no father, no comfort, no laughter. I found him in his bedroom, the red-black bloom on the wall, the old shotgun, the kind of silence that feels like screaming. I remember calling 911, my voice echoing down the hallway. But after that, it's all a blur. Funeral flowers, a detective's kind eyes, an off-white envelope with my name on it, written in careful black ink, for Aaron. For nearly 2 years, I couldn't bring myself to open it. I drifted through life, lost and unanchored. Hospital stays and sleepless nights, eating only when reminded, haunted by the memory of that room and that silence. 3. Opening the letter. It wasn't until months later, after therapy, after time had softened the sharpest edges, that I found the courage to open it. I slid the letter free, hands trembling, whispering to myself, I'm ready, I'm ready. The words inside were brief, just enough to wound and confuse. Aaron, I want you to know that I'm sorry, and that none of this is your fault. Ever since your mother's death, the only thing that brought me happiness was being your dad. Now that you are off on your own, I don't feel as if I have any reason to live. I love you, Dad. The world blurred with tears, anger, and grief twisting together. What did he mean? Your mother's death. He always told me she'd lost to her addictions, never knowing what became of her. And why couldn't he still be my dad, just because I'd gone to college? Was it so easy to let go? Something's wrong as I wiped my eyes and gathered my thoughts. Something about the letter nagged at me. The ink was black. My dad always used blue. Always. The handwriting was almost right, but the E in my name curled differently, the slant just a little off. I dug out every card he'd ever given me. Birthday wishes, graduation, old sticky notes with reminders. Every one in blue. Every one with his precise, pointed letters. But the letter was different. I compared and compared, my heart pounding as I realized the truth. Someone else had written this. Someone who wanted me to believe. The shadows in the family. I turned to Uncle Dan, who'd taken me in, his wife Molly, the people who'd tried to keep me safe when I couldn't keep myself safe. But when I asked Dan about my mother about the letter, he changed. His face shifted, a flicker of something dark in his eyes. Your dad kept a lot to himself, he told me, his voice too gentle, too rehearsed. Later, I found a post-it note in Dan's handwriting, and the E's matched the ones in the letter. Curved, not sharp, identical. It all came together in a moment of clarity. Dan had written my father's suicide note. Not Dad. A night of truth. I called Detective Tilly, the one who'd given me her card, her kindness a distant memory. She answered, calm and steady, her voice the first real comfort I'd felt in years. When I told her everything, she listened, truly listened, and told me to leave the house to bring the letter in the handwriting. I packed my things and crept toward the door, but Dan was waiting. He saw the backpack, the fear in my eyes. Where are you going? His voice was no longer kind. I lied. I tried to edge away, but he stepped forward, demanded the letter. He lunged, tearing at my backpack, and I remembered what Dad had taught me. If you're ever attacked, fight back. I did, and I ran. He chased me, cornered me in the yard, a heavy rock in his hand. But Detective Tilly was there, her gun drawn, her voice commanding. Dan dropped the rock, tried to lie, but it was too late. Other police arrived, and soon Dan was gone, face down in the grass, handcuffed and helpless. Evident. The true story. The weeks that followed were a swirl of hospital rooms and interviews. Molly, broken by guilt, confessed everything. It wasn't just my mother who'd struggled with addiction. They all had. A night of chaos, a terrible accident, a body hidden, a secret kept for years. My father had tried to be the best dad he could, but the guilt was too heavy. When he decided to confess, Dan chose to silence him and made it look like my father had chosen to leave me behind. But the truth came out at last. It's a lot to carry, the knowledge of secrets, of things hidden in darkness. But I'm not lost anymore. I know now that my dad loved me, and that his burdens were heavier than he could bear. And as I go forward, I hold his memory close, because even now, even after all the darkness, we're still a team, and together, there's nothing we can't handle. Not every mystery is solved. Listen to this one unfold. Story 15. The door that wouldn't let me leave. Sometimes the strangest nightmares are the ones that happen in daylight. I'm writing this from the floor of my own bathroom, legs curled to my chest, the world outside my door so close I can almost reach it. But every time I try to leave, I end up here again, sitting in silence, whispering to myself that none of this can be real. A simple afternoon. It started like any other day. I'd showered, the room foggy and warm, wrapped in soft pajamas, hair still damp. My phone always beside me, just in case, buzzed on the counter. I remember humming to myself as I reached for the door, the familiar click of the handle, the gentle rush of cool air as I pushed it open. But when I stepped forward, I was back in the bathroom. The door was closed again. I blinked, tried to steady my breath. Maybe I hadn't really left, I thought. Maybe I was distracted, caught up in a half dream. So I tried again. Hand on the handle, open the door, step out. And again, back in the bathroom. The door closed, untouched. It happened again, and again. Reaching for help. My first thought was to call for help. I dialed my parents' dad, didn't answer, but Mom did. She didn't understand, kept insisting I must mean the lock was broken, that I was trapped inside, but the door opens. I can see my hallway, my bedroom door, the stairs, the airing cupboard, all as they should be. I texted my mom, telling her I was inside, begging her to come over. She only lives 15 minutes away. While I waited, I sat on the bath mat typing these words as proof, so I wouldn't doubt myself, so I wouldn't forget what's real. The door's shut now. I don't remember closing it. 3. Unseen and unheard. Mom text again. Mom, why aren't you saying anything? Me. What do you mean? Mom, are you even in there? Me. Yes, I'm trapped in the bathroom. That's why I called you. Mom, I'm outside the door. I've been calling your name. I pressed my ear to the wood, but there's only silence. No voices, no footsteps, no sound at all. I opened the door. The landing is there, just as it should be. But Mom isn't. When I try to step out, I'm back inside, staring at the closed door. She tries the handle from her side, removes the lock, peeks through the hole, says the bathroom is empty. But on my side, the lock is still there. The door is whole. Drifting further, my phone battery drops. There's no charger in here. When it dies, I'll lose my last thread to the world outside. I try to kick the door. I've read that you should kick near the lock, the weak point, but nothing gives. The door is solid, unmoved. The window won't open at first, then it does. Suddenly the air outside strangely dark. Though it should be noon, everything is quiet, colors faded, the street below muted and lifeless. I lean out, desperate, but my window is closed again, the blind back in place, as if I never touched it. Unmoored from time, I rip down the shower curtain, but when I look up, it's hanging there untouched. Mom comes back with a friend, tries to unscrew the hinges, remove the door completely. She sends me a photo. She's standing in my bathroom, but I'm not there. She thinks I'm playing a joke. She stops replying. I'm left alone, phone screen dimming, counting each percentage as my battery slips away. Outside, the world is impossibly still. Sometimes I hear a low rumbling, far away, beneath the sound of my own heartbeat. I don't know what to do. Quiet desperation. I sit as far from the door and window as I can, arms wrapped tight around myself. The bathroom feels smaller now, the air thick with the scent of steam and fear. There's a sense of wrongness I can't shake, as if I'm slowly forgetting the shape of my own home, the sound of my mother's voice, the warmth of sunlight through the window. My phone is at 1%. If this is my last message, if I never find my way out, know that I tried, that I was here, writing in the quiet, hoping for someone to remember me. If I ever leave this place, I'll tell you what was waiting on the other side. But for now, the door won't let me go, and the world beyond grows dimmer by the hour. If you don't hear from me, just assume I'm still here, sitting in the silence waiting for morning to come. This tale might just keep you checking the locks. Story 16. Room 203. The Place That Waits. They say you never really remember your nightmares, not the true ones. You wake up sweating, heart pounding, some ancient wordless fear echoing in your chest. But you forget the details. That's how the mind protects itself. But I remember the door. I remember the heat and the color that wasn't a color at all, and the feeling that someone was watching me from the other side. And sometimes, late at night, when the world is quiet enough to hear your own breath, I remember room 203. 1. The night begins. The night began the way all bad nights begin, with a phone call in the dark, and a voice on the other end that didn't quite sound like itself. Rain ticked against the windshield as we pulled up to the school. City lights blurred and scattered across the glass. The world outside felt underwater, every movement slow, muffled, dreamlike. I wiped my hands on my vest, trying to shake off the feeling. There were children in the parking lot, huddled in clusters, shoulders hunched, eyes wide and shining in the ambulance lights. A few were crying, but most just stared at the building behind us, at the windows that looked suddenly too dark, too deep. No one spoke. No one wanted to be the first to break the silence. It felt sacred, like a moment at the edge of the world, right before the ground gives way beneath your feet. The door no one wants inside. The school was colder than the night outside. My boots clicked on the tile in the empty hallway, echoes dancing away into the darkness. Dex, our leader, moved ahead, radio pressed to his mouth, voice low and careful. We passed rows of lockers, each one shut tight, some decorated with photos and drawings. It should have felt normal, but it felt like we were walking through someone's memory, a place where things happen, but no one is there to remember them. The officer who met us at the door looked like he'd seen his own ghost, eyes rimmed red, hands trembling around his flashlight. "They're in room 203, he whispered, voice broken, as if each word hurt. "But you can't go in. You can't." "Why not?" I tried to keep my voice steady. He shook his head, lips pressed tight, as if he was keeping something from slipping out. "You just can't." The corridor. We climbed the stair. Each step creaked a little underfoot, the sound strangely loud in the hush. At the top, the hallway seemed to stretch and curve, the air hot and thick, almost syrupy. It felt as though we were walking into a different world, one where time trickled instead of flowed. Room 203 was just a door, a brown, battered school door, but the air in front of it shimmered, as if it were breathing. I pressed my palm to the wood. It was warmer than my own skin. Inside, a voice was speaking, steady, low, almost hypnotic, like a teacher giving a lesson at the end of time. But the words meant nothing. A long string of sounds, half remembered, an alphabet invented by someone who had never spoken before. "Oive." Blood and smoke. Jensen nudged me, pointing to the thin trickle of blood oozing from beneath the door. It curled along the floor, dark and slow, like molasses. We should have been afraid. Why what? But there was something else, a kind of curiosity, the kind that makes children stare at closed doors and wonder what's behind them. Dix knocked, voice too loud in the hush. Nothing changed. The voice inside kept going, soft and rhythmic, like a lullaby for something inhuman. The heat was rising. Sweat beaded on my neck, ran in slow lines down my back. The air was thick with something that smelled of copper, of old pennies and rain on warm pavement. The door opens, the voice inside stopped. A pause, long and trembling. The doorknob turned with a click, so gentle it barely sounded at all. A crack of violet light spilled out, shimmering and alive. It pulsed, casting slow, twisting shadows on the opposite wall. The heat was immense, not the heat of a fire, but of a fever. I looked away. Something deep inside told me not to look, not to see what waited inside. Dex and two others stared, their faces slackened, eyes wide, blood leaking from the corners, dripping onto their vests. When I finally glanced up, they were gone. Just Jensen left, kneeling in the dust, arms wrapped around his head, muttering in a language I'd never heard. The world shifts Lee tried to break down the door, splinters flying, purple light leaking out in jagged lines. He froze, hands to his eyes, mouth open in a silent scream. Axwell was next, and something reached through the splintered wood. It was like an insect's limb, black and jointed, shrouded in violet smoke, moving slow as a nightmare. It wrapped him up and pulled him through the door, the wood groaning, his scream echoing for a long, long time. I turned and ran, heart hammering, lungs burning, down the stairs. The world seemed to tilt and sway. The air was heavier, and every shadow seemed to move. But waiting at the ground floor, the exit was gone. Just a wall of thick, humming smoke, pulsing and alive, as if it were breathing too. I pressed my radio to my mouth, voice trembling. "Where are you? Are you out?" The answer was a whisper. You need to hide." "What's happening?" There was a sound in the background, like a windstorm far away, and something else. "I'm at the window," the voice said, "and there's nothing out there anymore. Nothing at all." I found a classroom, dark, windowless, a place where even the air seemed afraid to move. I slid to the floor, knees to my chest, listening to the sounds in the hallway, the soft drag of something not quite human, the gentle click of claws untied. It's Dread's lullaby. Sometimes I hear a voice outside the door, soft, calm, patient. It never says my name, but it feels like it's waiting for me to answer. The violet light comes and goes, and with it the world seems to bend and blur. I don't know how long I've been here. My phone is almost out. If anyone ever finds this, remember, some doors aren't meant to be opened, and some mysteries are safest when they stay unknown, waiting in the heat and the darkness for someone else to listen. The next account is as puzzling as it is chilling. Story 17. I woke up during surgery. They weren't trying to save me. Most nightmares vanish at the first touch of morning light, but some stay with you, clinging to your skin, leaving traces in your bones. I used to believe the worst pain was dying slowly, the slow rot of cancer eating away at your body. But pain is nothing compared to waking in the darkness, paralyzed, mute, and realizing that the hands over you aren't trying to save you, they're building something new. Why? Awakening, the first thing I feel is the cold, a deep, hollow chill that sinks through the thin cotton sheet into my skin. My mind is foggy, heavy, half awake. I try to open my eyes, but they are sealed shut, not with sleep, but with the tug of medical tape, pinning my eyelids down. A voice, low and rough, slices through the silence too close to my ear, vibrating through the bones of my skull. "All right, let's get this started." Incision time 9:45. The words don't make sense at first. They echo distant, then suddenly near, as if the room is folding in on itself. I try to speak. My tongue feels thick, heavy, my jaw unmovable. Nothing. I try to move a finger, my toes, but I am stone, trapped within myself. The sensations, a sharp pain blooms at the back of my head, hot and sudden, and something warm trickles down my neck. A slow, sticky river. I want to scream, but no sound comes. Another voice, now higher, quicker, an edge of panic in the tone. "Prepare the device." Part 108. We don't have much time to get it in place. There's a shuffling, the clatter of metal against metal, the soft hush of gloves against skin. I hear the slap of something wet on steel. The room smells acrid, metallic, and underneath it all, the faint sweetness of disinfectant. 3. Realization. A memory tries to surface, pain in my stomach. The word cancer whispered in 2 bright rooms. But why are they inside my head? More pain, Brighter now. Apply pressure right there. Don't you see the bleed? Not working. Fine, then cauterize it. The scent of burned flesh, thick, oily, a taste at the back of my throat. My body lurches, even though I cannot move. I remember dimly the way my stomach turned after days without food, how my body felt hollowed out, like a house after a storm. Ivis, terror and confusion. I try to focus. Had I agreed to this? I remember the word tumor, the endless signatures, the hope and fear that blur together at the end of life. But the voices don't sound kind, not like the voices I knew. Perforator drill, a whining mechanical shriek, the vibration rattling through my skull, bones splintering, cracking, a sound I will never unhear. Shit, did you go too deep? Nah, he's fine. There is a darkness now, soft, not total. I feel hands moving inside my head, a dull pressure, the squelch of gloved fingers, the faint tap-tap of metal against bone. The device is the device charged yet? Charged and ready, doctor. A weight pressing, something cold sliding deep into my brain. Pressure, so much pressure. Put the electrodes around the device entry. Set it to 650 milliamps. A high singing note, electric sharp, then a violent jolt that snaps me in half, and then nothing. 5. Waking. When I come to, the world is too bright. There is a voice, sweet and sing-song, cutting through the fog. Everything went great, Mr. Jones. We got it all. I try to speak, my throat sandpaper dry. There is a sting in my belly, the memory of pain, dull and heavy. A doctor with a pleasant, unfamiliar face, a syringe filled with crimson, transparent liquid. He speaks gently, but I can feel the hidden wires beneath his words. You drilled into my head, I say, the words breaking from my lips before I can think. He smiles, soothing, perfectly normal to have vivid dreams under anesthesia. Fantasy and reality blur sometimes, but it wasn't a dream. I felt it.
I reached to the back of my head. No scar, no stitch, hair untouched.
I let myself believe the lie. For a while, thought aftermath. But the memories return in waves. At night, in quiet moments, whenever the world slows down enough for me to hear my own heartbeat, I search for the company, Artifacts Pharmaceuticals. No record, no address. The phone number a dead end. My boss Harrison tells me his own story, almost identical to mine. A miracle cure, a vanished company, a blank space where memory should be, and then the static. A whine, a shriek inside my skull, growing louder, sharper, until Harrison collapses. Gone just like that. Others too. A man at the gym, muscular, scarred, the tattoo arbor vitae curling around a white puckered line. The static rages, he falls. And the truth unravels, I beg for answers. Doctors, scans, images. A starburst on the CT, a diamond-shaped shadow, hidden deep near my brainstem. A scar so small I'd never find it unless I was looking. No records, no explanation. Whatever they did to me, I am not alone. Others out there, walking, working, waiting for the static to call them home. Wakes lullaby of dread. Now, when the static comes, I run, I hide, I wait for the next time it finds me. The next time the device in my skull remembers what it was built for. If you are reading this, if someone calls you with a miracle, if you see the name Artifacts, walk away. Some cures are worse than the disease. Some nightmares do not end when you wake. Ready for something a little darker? Listen closely. Story 18. Everyone says I had a baby, so I started to go along with it. They say memory is fragile, a thin, shifting thing that changes with every retelling. But sometimes reality is even softer, easy to bruise, easy to bend. The town says I had a baby. I don't remember ever being pregnant, but after a while I started to go along with it. Because the truth is I can't quite recall what's real anymore. Strange kindness. It started with a knock on my door. My neighbor, her face shining with gentle excitement, holding out a pair of tiny baby shoes. Pink velvet, glitter dusted on the toes, sequined flowers that winked in the afternoon light. Her hands shook a little as she passed them to me, and I smiled out of politeness, out of confusion. "Oh, thank you, they're just precious," I heard myself say, my voice too soft, too practiced. She left, humming to herself, her footsteps fading down the hall. I tucked the shoes in my closet, behind a pile of unopened boxes, stacked among bibs, rattles, powder blue onesies, the crib sheets still in plastic, all gifts from neighbors and acquaintances. Soft pastel things for a child I have never seen.
Hi.
The questions begin. 6 months ago, the questions started soft at first, the way people in small towns talk, half whispered, full of expectation. "How's your baby? Is she sleeping through the night? Do you need any more diapers?" Each time my mouth fumbled. And thanks, or "I think you have the wrong person." But the questions grew more insistent, faces expectant and kind, until it was easier to nod along than protest. I told myself it was a mistake, that I was being confused for someone else. I am not unique. Short, dark hair, quiet eyes. Maybe there's another woman, somewhere nearby, whose life is running parallel to mine. Terry. The world rearranges one afternoon at the grocery store. The manager, white-haired kindly, leaned over the counter, a conspiratorial smile on his lips. "Did your little girl like the formula I recommended? I put an extra can in your bag." I nodded, heart pounding, though I don't remember picking out formula. At home, there it was, almost empty, next to a clean baby bottle in the sink. I stood in my kitchen, hands trembling, staring at the bottle, trying to remember. Had I bought it? Used it? Had I ever heard a baby's cry in these rooms, echoing off the old wooden floors? But the world kept bending, reshaping around me. The next day, another neighbor waved as I got the mail. "How's the little darling?" "She's wonderful. Sleeping through the night." I lied, the words warm in my mouth, almost true. "Hervia." Slipping, I started answering questions I didn't remember being asked. Started thanking people for toys and blankets I'd never seen before. At night, I'd open the closet and run my hands over the soft fabrics, the pastel colors, trying to conjure the feeling of memory, the familiar ache of love. But it was only emptiness, the silent hum of an old house settling in the dark. A young woman at the coffee shop smiled at me, her baby on her hip. "We should do another play date. Your Holly is just precious." Her blue eyes, that little blue dress. She showed me a picture, her baby alone in a red shirt. "That's Holly, isn't it?" I stared, searching the pixels for a child who was supposed to be mine. Things rearranged at home. I opened the closet, baby things spilling out, the faint scent of talcum powder and plastic. I found a dress light blue, just as the woman had said. Had I bought it? Had someone given it to me? I couldn't remember. A few days later, I called my mother, desperate for clarity. "Oh, Pearl, how are you and my grandbaby?" "Us? Two? Don't act like that," she scolded, her voice sharp with hurt. "I know I haven't been in touch, but I care about you and Holly." Holly, the name I always liked, the name I'd given to imaginary children in my daydreams. Years ago, when life felt simpler. After the call, I found the crib assembled by the window, sunlight slanting through the bars, dust motes swirling in the quiet air. A changing table stood beside it, neat and unused. I don't remember setting them up, but a dark bruise on my shin tells me I did. The town remembers for me. People greeted me on the street. "How's Holly today?" "She's good, happy as ever," I said, the words like a lullaby, the rhythm easy, comforting. "I heard her screaming last night. You must be exhausted." Once inside, I searched the quiet, holding my breath, listening for the phantom wails of a child I had never held. Mail piled up, bills, coupons, red envelopes. I stood at the sink, glass in hand, and heard a sound from the bedroom. Just the house, I whispered, but I found a stuffed elephant in the crib, soft, worn, love. I picked it up, cradling it for a moment. Then suddenly, I realized I was holding a baby bottle, but my cup was still in my other hand. I froze, staring, lost in the cross-current of memory and imagination, which was real, which was the dream. Seven cracks in the facade. Something in me broke. I kicked the crib once, twice, until the wood cracked and splintered. I shoved the pieces, the toys, the clothes back into the closet, slammed the door, and leaned against it, chest heaving. No more, I whispered. No more pretending. But the world would not let me go. Wait this. The world will not forget at the coffee shop. The barista's smile faltered when I told her no. My kid hadn't kept me up last night. A stranger asked gently about postpartum depression. I insisted. I'm not a mother, but she only looked at me with more pity. Then a man rushed in. You left your kid in the car. Panic gripped me. I ran to the parking lot, opened the back door. Empty. No car seat. No Holly. I drove home in a daze, the world tilting at odd angles, the line between truth and imagination thinning with each breath. Touch it. Unraveling at home, I sat on my bed, scrolling through my phone. A single picture, a baby in a red shirt, alone. I stared, waiting for blue eyes to appear, a blue dress to shimmer in the pixels, but there was only the one. Still, sometimes I could almost remember the weight of a child in my arms, the gentle sighs, the scent of baby lotion. I tell myself it's just a trick of the mind, a suggestion, but as I write this, I hear crying down the hall. So soft, so persistent. Holly is crying. I should go check on her.